But for me and my wife, living up here, I'm going to say 24, the heat. Um, she and I, we are both environmentally conscious and sensitive. And so for a long, long time, we do a lot of recycling. We consider ourselves tree huggers and environmentally sensitive. And so when we were getting messages about, we live in Westerville, and so Westerville Electric has its own electric company, and they were notifying us that they anticipated a much higher demand because of the heat, that people were going to be turning up their air conditioners. And so what she and I did was we turned our air conditioning thermostat up so it wouldn't cut on as frequently, because we were wanting to avoid contributing to an outage. And so the electric company was saying, if you can, reduce your need because we're going to experience a tremendous need. So we made sure that we turned off things. We had both read an article that was called something about electric vampires. And these are the things that run 24/7 that you don't know about. And I remember an article saying, turn off the lights at night and look for any kind of little green light or yellow light that's turned on. Over here, there's a radio or the thermometer or something. And those are the electric vampires. They're sucking power away and you're not really aware of it. So we found some of those. A dehumidifier was one of them. And we went around and turned those off. So we were, in our minds, we were making a conscious effort to reduce our demand on the Westerville electric grid because we wanted to help them deal with what they were anticipating was going to be a surge. So we turned our thermostat up so that it didn't start turning on the air conditioner until it got to be like 78 degrees instead of 72. And so we thought that was something we could do. We turned off our little electric vampires. And on a couple of days, we put the thermostat, turned it off completely, and we came to the library. They were opening up cooling centers, I think they call them. And we did that because we, here again, trying to be socially aware and socially conscious, that we wanted to do what we could to avoid contributing to the overdemand. And I know that one of our professors told us, even if you are only one person and you only take one action, that if there are 1,000 of you, it can have an impact. And so that's kind of the way we were thinking through that. We didn't feel oppressed by the condition, but we did feel that we needed to do something to prevent what could be an outage. And so we were doing that. We also spent a little bit more time outside and in a shopping mall. Neither one of us are big shoppers, but the days that we turned our thermostat off so that it wasn't going to turn the air conditioner on at all, that was a day that we probably didn't want to be in the house. So we wanted to find another place to be. And we also talked to our friends about that same kind of behavior. You know, what are you, like your questions you're asking me, we would ask our friends, what are you guys doing? So are you contributing to this over demand? And some of them had never heard of the electric vampires. They'd never heard about that. And so we kind of felt good that we were talking to them about that issue and hoping that they would walk around their house in the dark and see, where's the little green light turned on? You know, where are we actually contributing to this use of electricity that we don't know about? And lastly, my wife and I went to a thing in Westerville called the Westerville Citizens Academy. And it's a great program that a lot of people aren't aware of, but essentially you get a group of people, I think there was 9 of us, and every Thursday night, I think at 7 o'clock for about 5 weeks, they would take us behind the scenes to different departments in Westerville's government and show us what goes on behind the scenes. And we got to go to the fire department, the police department, the electric utility. We got a tour of the water plant. And I thought it was a great introduction to the city of Westerville. I didn't know that the city of Westerville had its own electric. And so when we got to see them and talk to them and kind of see what they're dealing with, that was very enlightening. And I think it helped us when they started sending out alerts like we may have an outage this week because the temperature is going to be up in the upper 90s. And so do what you can to conserve electricity. I think having had that experience, kind of one-on-one, and we met a lady. I'm trying to think of her name. Can't think of her name right now, but she's one of the administrators of the electric utility, and she was very, very helpful about explaining to us how they get their electricity here in Westerville. And we had a fun event that we got to go up in a cherry picker and see all around with the cherry picker. But individually as a couple and living in Westerville, it was insightful to understand how they get their electricity. And when they send out an alert saying, we're anticipating a high demand this week, do what you can to conserve electricity, it meant something. I think it would have meant something had we even not gone to the Westerville Citizens Academy, but that really heightened our awareness of it. So it helped us understand what we were dealing with and what we could do as an individual couple to maybe help prevent or at least contribute to the prevention of an outage. So we are both, my wife was a professor and I was a professor, and we both understand the value of education in terms of dealing with upcoming issues like climate change and how it's going to affect people. And we're both getting older, and as we see, this wasn't like this when we were growing up. We can see these changes happening because we were older, and we have these memories about when we were younger. So it's something to be concerned about, and we're trying to do what we can. We both do volunteer work that is environmentally sensitive, and we both have an opportunity to tell people about issues around climate change. In fact, one of the things that you may be aware of, I do presentations for Franklin Soil and Water Conservation District, and I do usually about 6 of them a year. And earlier this year, I was doing one, and we were mentioning increased heavy rain events and how that was contributing to flooding in low-lying areas. And I used the term climate change in my presentation. And there was an individual in the class who was going to debate me about the validity of climate change. So I did what I could. It was kind of an awkward moment because I just thought everybody knows and accepts it. This person didn't accept it. So I went back to Franklin Soil and Water's administration and I said, what is your position on stating climate change? I mean, I take it as a fact. This person didn't. And I said, so we're in the middle of these presentations. How should we address that? And she said, it is our position. She, the director, said, is it our position that climate change is a fact, that humans are impacting it, and that we shouldn't back down from it. So, if you get a person that doesn't agree with you, you just say, well, here's our case on it. You can believe what you want to believe.
So I appreciate your time with this. And is there anything else that you'd like to say in regard to, I guess, like heat or climate or words of wisdom that you would have for somebody who maybe they just moved to Westerville or Central Ohio, and maybe they're coming from the north and they're not used to the heat?
If I know that some of the, I don't know what you call them, but the email strings that I am on, that people send us information about, there's going to be a talk on the decline of the monarch butterfly. Why is it declining? How far north? You may be familiar with a weed called kudzu. It's primarily down south, but as I understand it, it's beginning to creep northward because the climate has changed so much that now Virginia and Ohio, that climate is more conducive to kudzu surviving than it was 5 years ago. That it can survive down in Tennessee and Alabama because of the weather, but because of climate change, something like that, which is a very invasive species, is being able to move north because the environment's changing enough to make north now a little bit more acceptable for that particular plant. And as I understand it, there's a number of invasive species that are responding to climate change by now increasing their area of influence because they can live up here now. We don't have as cold a winter as we used to have. So I would say if you come into Westerville, I would encourage people to take an opportunity to go to that Westerville Citizens Academy because it was just tremendously enlightening. And it also let me know that our community was responsive to people that have an interest. And so I have found several groups that I think they're good for me because I can take my concerns about climate change to them and they can say, well, here's a political action you can take. Here's a candidate that believes like you believe. You might want to support them. or here's some volunteer work that you can do to kind of ameliorate climate change. And so those are activities that we can do to become active as an individual to do something that we can.